Hey everyone, welcome to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com and here on my YouTube channel. And in this video, we're going to take a look at some of my favorite new features for Studio One version 4.5, which just released the other day. And there's already a bunch of videos on YouTube talking about all the features of version 4.5, but I'm going to just show you maybe the 8 or 10 that I like from a mixing engineer's perspective. A lot of my followers and students want to know what I think about the new features in version 4.5, and we're going to take a look at those right now. But before we get to that, if you like what you see in this video, hit that subscribe button below. Also go out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and if you have not done so already, get your 5 free mixing training courses worth about $110. It's my gift to you just for checking out HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. And for a limited time right now, you can go out to MixingMadeEasy.net if you want to learn the craft of mixing, perfect for beginners and intermediates. We have a 30-day free trial for anyone that wants to check out MixingMadeEasy.net. Absolutely free for 30 days. Go check it out. We have had hundreds of new members sign up over the last 2 months since I've started this 30-day free trial, and we have a 97.5% retention, meaning that after the 30 days, 97.5% of the people that have signed up continued their membership because they know it's a great quality training course or membership website, and it is the most affordable with the best quality content anywhere on the internet. So go check out MixingMadeEasy.net. Join it for free for 30 days. You will enjoy MixingMadeEasy.net. So now let's head on over into Studio One here. And we are here now in version 4.5. Now this was released, I believe, on May 19th or May 20th, 2019, depending on when you're watching this video. Today is the 22nd of May, 2019. So I'm a couple of days late getting my video out. And as I said, there's already a ton of videos of people going through all the features. And so you're going to see a lot of the same things that I'm going to show you today. But a lot of my followers want to know, what do I think? And they value my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the ones, again, from a mixing engineer's perspective, which is mostly what I do these days. What features do I find useful? If you want to see all the different features, and I think there's over 70 of them or close to 70 of them, you can search YouTube. They're all over the place. Presonus has put a bunch of stuff out as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here. I got a list of some of the features that I like, and I want to show you that now. Now, let me start off by saying the first thing is that this is a free update. So if you are a version 4 owner of Studio One, this is for free. So you're getting almost 70 new features absolutely free. Now, this is one of the things that I love about Presonus, and one of the things why I'm kind of a Studio One disciple, as it were, is that Presonus has always, from the time that I've been involved with Studio One, way back in version 2, several years ago, has always listened to their user community, and they are constantly improving Studio One and adding the unique features that all that their members are asking for. And more times than not, these updates are always for free, which is astonishing. No other DAW company really does that as much as Presonus does. Now, so when we go to version 3 to version 4, it was a paid upgrade, a very affordable paid upgrade. I would assume when we go from version 4.5 to version 5, whenever version 5 comes out, I'm sure they're working on that. That will probably be a monumental upgrade. There'll probably be some cost involved, but again, it's always very affordable. But all their versions between version 4 and version 5, and we had in this case now version 4.5, is always for free. And kudos to Presonus for doing that. I think that's wonderful that they continue to try to refine Studio One. They really want it to be the #1 DAW on the market. And every year I say it over and over, they're getting closer and closer to becoming, they're probably already the most popular DAW in the home studio market, but I think they're also looking to capture that commercial market and kind of knock Pro Tools and Avid off the mountain as the king of the mountain for so many years. I think they're head and shoulders above the innovation that Avid is doing these days. And again, a lot of these updates are free. So that's the first thing, is that all these things, all this upgrade here for version 4.5 is free if you're already a version 4 owner. If you're a version 3 owner and you haven't upgraded to version 4, there is a paid upgrade. You can go ahead and go to their website, go to Presonus.com and check all the upgrade pricing. They're constantly putting it on sale and giving great deals. And I don't want to quote any pricing because by the time you watch this video, that pricing could have changed. So that's #1. And this is in no particular order, okay? Not from least important to most important, just the way I kind of wrote them down on my notepad here. So the next feature I want to show you is the way that what they're calling smooth out the waveform. And what does that mean? So let me close my mixer here for a second. Let's take a look at this one track here and I'll expand it. what they've done is they've gone ahead and they've kind of giving you better resolution to this the waveform, and it's smoothed it out. And where that's really important is when you continue to zoom in. As we zoom in closer and closer in this audio, you can see how much smoother and how much easier it is to really zoom in and really get very precise in any kind of editing that you need. This was a huge request from what I'm told from the Pro Tools community. People that were using Pro Tools for all those years, this is something you could do in Pro Tools, and this was very handy for people. Okay, now when you upgrade to 4.5, some of you may find that it doesn't default to this setting, that you have to turn it on. And let me show you where you do that, and you can see a before and after. So you could see the waveform here and the quality of the resolution of the waveform, okay? The way you turn that on, and if you're a PC user, it'll be the same way, but you get to this menu in a different way. But on a Mac, you go to Studio One, you go to Preferences, you go to the Advanced tab, and then you come down here under the Editing tab, Draw Smooth Waveforms. This might come as unchecked when you first do the upgrade. You have to double check that. So keep your eye on the waveform here, and I'm going to uncheck this for a minute, show you the current or the old way prior to 4.5 and hit apply. You can see how it visually changes here. Okay, let me do that again. I'll click it, hit apply, and you can see how it changes. Now, you may say, well, that's not a big deal. What's the difference? Well, let me just uncheck it again. So the current way, prior to 4.5, if I were to do that same zoom in, you can see how it never really smooths out completely. And it's not as easy to get in there and to do really precise editing if you need to. You don't always need to do this, but this was always a little clunky. When you go to Preferences, and you check off Draw Smooth Waveforms, that will give you a higher resolution look at the audio waveform, and when you zoom in, you really get that nice smoothed out waveform as it is, and you get some real precise abilities to edit. So that's an improvement. I like that. Again, not a feature that you're going to use every single day of your life, but nevertheless, something that's been a request from the community for a long time, and mostly people that were heavy Pro Tools users. That's something that was heavily requested. So that's the next feature. The third thing I want to show you, or the second thing I want to show you, third thing I want to talk about, is the I/O screen. So again, we go back to the same area, Studio One Preferences, and we're going to go to the Audio Setup tab and go to Song Setup. Here you have the ability now to do a few things, which is pretty cool. You have the ability to color code your inputs and outputs. Okay, we have no inputs. I'll set some up for you in a second. Inputs and outputs. So we go and we can do add multiple inputs all at once in one single task, as opposed to doing them separately. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say I have a drum kit I want to track, and let's say I need 10 microphones, 10 mono tracks. I'm just going to say add. Add mono would give you a single track. If you just hit add, you're going to get the I/O channels here, and we'll just leave it labeled as input for now. Mono, channel count, 10. And you can even pick the color code. You can color code them now. So let's say I want all of my drums this brown color. Hit OK, and here we go. Inputs 1 through 10. It sets up the inputs on your interface, depending on your interface, and you can always change that around by clicking in here. Okay. And then you can always double click and you can name them as well, like you could in the last version, kick, snare, toms, overheads, so on and so forth. Hit apply, okay? And that'll bring it all mono tracks, as I said. Hit okay. Okay, so we can do that. The next thing we can do when we can color code of those, let's also go back and take a look at that screen again. Again, I'm looking at my notes here. We can also export our inputs and our outputs. Down here in this right-hand corner, we can export this as an I/O configuration. Now you may say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, let's say, and you can name this anything you want. You can save it to your desktop or any other folder. Let's say you were working on your session in your home studio on your interface, and you were going to be working in multiple studios. Let's say you were working on a laptop and then you wanted to come back and bring it in on your home studio. You can, if you bring your session to another studio, load up that session into Studio One, you have to go ahead and you have to reset up all your I/O. Where if you you export your I/O configurations, you could go ahead and it'll just save you time. So when you load up on the other studio with the same kind of interface, you can already have your I/O already set up, if that makes sense. And that can be very helpful. Again, is it a feature you're going to use every single day? Probably not for most people, but it is a real handy time saver and something that's very cool. So that's really cool. So let's just say okay to that. The next section I want to show you is the input section, and we'll open up our mixer here by clicking on this button here. This is something that's really cool. This is something that I'm going to find very useful. So let's hit the input tab. But we have to set up our inputs. Did we set up our inputs? Yeah, let's just drag that in. Okay. And you can see my voice here is coming in on track 4, as you can see here. Some of the things that they've added to the input section, which is fabulous. They've added on every single input, you can see they have gain control, input level control. Okay. So let's see on channel 4 here, if I wanted to come in here and I could, add 3 dB to it if I wanted to add more signal, or you could just take your mouse, left click, and you can see I'm adding 24 dB, and obviously it's clipping right now my voice all the way down, minus 24 dB. Okay, you can see all of that. Pretty cool, right? So now you can control the input signal coming in from your interface right from the input section with the click of a mouse, or you can manually go in and type it. Very handy, very, very quick. What's really cool about this as well is if you have a Studio Live Series 3 mixer, a Studio 192, or I believe also the Quantum by Presonus, you can put your hands on the hardware, you could turn the preamp, and you'll see it control the DAW software. Very similar to what the Apollo does, the Universal Audio Apollo with their console software. So you can control it from the hardware, or you can control it from the software, and the software will control the actual interface. Now, again, it's only that feature from what I believe is, as of right now, the recording of this video is only for a handful of the Presonus interfaces. Again, primarily the Studio Live Mixer Series 3, the Studio 192, and the Quantum. Will there be additional interfaces that will work with in the future? Possibly. Again, check their website for current information, but that's a real handy feature. And is brand new to this version 4.5. They also have a phase polarity flip here on each channel. Again, very, very handy. You could do it all right from the software, which is really, really cool. So that's the input section. And as you noticed, in the I/O screen, if you remember, we colored all of our inputs here, our drums this color, kind of light brown color. So it also now color codes all the inputs as well, which is really, really cool. And if you wanted to change the color from this view, you can do that. I believe you can do that just by like any other track. Change them to purple. You could do whatever you want there. So you can change the colors here, or you can set them up in the I/O screen. So again, a nice little visual to have color coding on the inputs. Really cool that you can change the gain structure coming into for tracking purposes, and also being able to flip that phase is really, really cool. The other thing I want to show you is if you come over here to the mixer view. Let's expand this a little bit here, okay? And if we come over to our little wrench here in the top right-hand or left-hand corner, excuse me, you can see that this has now been reorganized with little categories. We have a grouping category, we have a visibility category, and we have a channel component category, which is cool. So if we want to see this little new feature, or this new category called input control, if I click that box, okay, and group assignment, if I want to click that box, and I'll show you what that means in a second. When I clicked input, now you can see even in the mixer, we have gain control and phase polarity flip. Where is this gain control very handy? This is a huge one for me. Let's say you have a bunch of tracks that you brought in from a client, so you can mix the song and all the tracks are way too hot. You've seen me do this in a lot of my training videos for the Made Easy series, the Quick Mix series, mixingmadeeasy.net, where we have to gain stage our project because the tracks are too hot, or maybe they're recorded way too conservative, either end of the spectrum. What did we have to do? Well, you would either have to, on your inserts here on the offending track, have to put like the mix tool plugin from Presonus to control the gain, or you'd have to come up to the actual event itself, and you see I did it here on this old session. You'd have to do what they call clip gain, raise this up and down right here. No longer do you need to do that. You can do that all right from here. Okay, you can again just left click and use your mouse, and you can go ahead and you can see how I can plus or minus 24 dB. Very, very nice. Don't need to use the mix tool. Don't need to go up to each individual event and do clip gain. You can do it all right from here. That's a really cool thing. Something that I'm going to use all the time. I'll use that feature all the time. It's great. Okay, the other thing that I turned on here is the grouping. Again, under the wrench here, if we check off the group assignments, now they've added grouping to the way that you would, Pro Tools users, again, was a real heavy feature that more Pro Tools like. And if we click this little icon down here in the bottom left-hand corner, the little 3 prongs here, it's going to open up our group box. Now, let's say we wanted to group all of our drums and we wanted to highlight. Let's just highlight all of our drums here in brown, okay? And we want to, we could do the shortcut would be Command on a Mac or the Windows key on a PC and the letter G for goat. And we're gonna get an add group box here. Let's say we wanna call this drums. Okay, so now you'll see over in our group section here, we have our drums. Now, if I right click on this, these are all the things that we can select or deselect to make all the features that we can use with those with that drum group now. So if we want to edit all our drums as a group, we can. The volume all as a group, pan and mute, record, monitor, inserts and sends, or you can dissolve the group or delete it. We'll do that in a second. So now that I've grouped these, I can go ahead, take one fader, and you can see it'll move it all up together. If I had the editing feature on, if I do like a fade in or fade out, it'll all do fade ins and fade outs, which is really cool. And again, you could just right click on this and you can deselect or select any one of these things that you like. And there's more that you can do with this. This is not a feature that I personally use a whole lot, but this is really big. Again, for people that were really from the Pro Tools community, I think Studio One this time around really tried to add some features that were very Pro Tool-esque to make the Pro Tools user feel more comfortable coming from Pro Tools to Studio One. So we'll do some more videos maybe in the future on the power of really using groups, but just know that now you could do a lot more with groups than you used to be able to do. And you can see down here in the bottom, see where it says drums underneath the faders. Okay, it shows me now that all of these are in a drum group. Okay, and that was because I turned on that little feature here under the wrench. See group assignment? If I uncheck that, you'll see that goes away underneath the fader. Okay, watch when I check it. And there it goes. So it's an easy identifier. So when you're looking down at your console view, you can see what's grouped and what's not grouped. And where is it grouped to? Very cool. We can right click on this and we can dissolve the group or delete the group, and then everything is back to normal and each fader is independent. Okay, very, very cool. You can still temporarily just group something without having to create a group, where you can just highlight a bunch of tracks and you can just take one fader and you can do this. You were always able to do this if you wanted a temporary group, but you don't want it to permanently be grouped. You can still do that, but now you can use groups. So that's, again, more of a Pro Tools feature that was brought over to Studio One, and I think that's really, really, really cool. The other thing that we could talk about a little bit in the mixer view is now we have different ways that we can meter what's going on the mixer channel. So if you were to just highlight and right click on a track, I think it's right click, right? You'll have, let's see, where is it here? Or is it on the meter? Yeah, here it is. You click, you put your mouse up on the meter and right click. Now we could do peak RMS, we can do peak, we could do peak hold, and now we can also do pre-fader metering, which is really powerful for when you're tracking. You can see when you're tracking, what you see on the fader meter here is actually, if you switch it to pre-fader, will be the incoming signal, which is a really, really great way to see how you're tracking coming into the DAW. Okay, a lot of people sometimes get confused with the fact that before this pre-fader metering, everything was post-fader, meaning whatever you were recording in was after the signal flowed through all of your plugins. What you would see is the output, okay, post-fader. Now with this, you can look at pre-fader, which is really cool, really handy for tracking. The next thing I want to show you is over in the browser. Now, this is another really great feature, very Cubase-like, which I really love. Look down here, if you go to the home button in your browser, okay, go down here and we have what's called the plugin manager. Now, this is like a Cubase kind of a feature. I don't know if Pro Tools has such a thing, but Cubase does. This is a wonderful, wonderful feature for managing your plugins and not having to see in your browser under all your effects plugins that you don't want, you don't own, you don't use, that kind of thing. So you can filter it. You can search over here on the left-hand side. You can the type of plugins, you know, VST3, VST2s, audio units, native. Okay, so I've unchecked them all, which means you're not going to see anything. But let's see, I just want to see my native plugins. Here's all the Presonus plugins. Okay, let's say I just want to see my audio units. Now, I don't use audio units is more of an Apple Logic thing, right? But you don't want to see those in Studio One necessarily. I don't want to see those in the browser. I don't need them, so I'll keep them unchecked. So maybe I just want to see my native, my VST2s, and VST3s. Really, really cool. And they're sorted by name, type, vendor, and what folder that they're in. You can also look at by vendor. Over here, you can select, reselect. You can just look at things in a much better way. You can also see anything that's on the blacklist that's not coming up in Studio One, okay? You can update all your plugins just by doing this. It'll rescan all the plugins on your system and update the list. Okay, next time, and then you have to wait till you restart the program again. So let's say you installed and downloaded a new plugin. It doesn't come up in your list. You hit update plugins, restart Studio One, and it should show up in your browser. So this is just another way, and again, I've only played with this a little bit, but this is a great way to really tidy up all of your plugins in your browser and only look at the plugins that you really want to look at and not have everything in the list that you don't need. This is another really cool feature that's been heavily requested, and I appreciate this feature an awful lot. Fantastic. So that's also cool. The next thing I want to show you is the ability to export your mix down, your song, in mono. So everything else here looks the same. You can export over here on the right-hand side. Usually I go between the start and end marker, but you have different selections here, which was always here. But down here under options, your output, you can now check mono, meaning you could do a mono mix. Now you may say, well, why do I want to do that? Well, is it something you're going to use every day? Again, not always, but it's a good way for you to check what your mix would sound like in a mono system, which is still, still relevant to some degree these days, even though most times it's going to be stereo. This is also great if, let's say, you're doing voiceover work, and let's say you're recording a voiceover track for a client. Well, you can send them a mono voiceover track, which is really cool as well. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So you can now export your mix in mono if you want to do that as well. Again, not something you use every day, but nevertheless a handy little feature that I think a lot of people will use from time to time. The next thing I want to show you, which is another request that was heavily requested, or another feature I should say, is the ability to set up side chaining right from the plugin itself. So let me show you what I mean. And this goes for not only Presonus plugins, but also third-party plugins, and I'll show you. So let's say we have an EQ here, and let's say we wanted to sidechain an EQ or a compressor. Doesn't really matter. Up here we have this new button called sidechain. You click on this arrow, and this gives you the ability to select where you want the sidechain, what track you want it to work with, which is really cool. In the past, you'd have to go over and you'd have to set it up on your send, but you can do it all right from the plugin. So let's say, for example, we wanted it to be, I don't know, this acoustic guitar 1. You can see over here on acoustic guitar 1 now, the sidechain is all set up. Okay, so you can do it all right from the plugin itself. Where this would be helpful is, let's say, a compressor on your kick drum and you're sidechaining it with your bass guitar. That's a pretty common one. Okay, so not only does this work though on Presonus plugins, but it'll also work on a third-party plugin, such as the BX Console by Plugin Alliance, where sidechaining is available. Here it is right here. Okay? Pretty cool. So you can do this from third-party plugins. You can do this from stock plugins. Just makes the whole sidechaining process easier. I don't do a ton of sidechaining every now and again, but again, it's a nice quick way if you are going to use sidechaining. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, probably another fantastic feature that I really can't show you how it works, but I can explain to you how it works. And that is the improvement in CPU performance, particularly with VST instruments. So one of the things that probably the second most second most popular question that I get all the time in email, through my YouTube videos in the comment section on Facebook is folks that have problems with a lot of crackling and popping and latency issues within Studio One. And again, there's a lot of variables here on why that happens. I have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel that shows you how to do things like go ahead and change your buffer settings over here, your device block size if you're working on a Mac. I've had videos on that. We won't waste your time here. But sometimes that doesn't always solve the problem. One of the problems that a lot of people don't realize when they first get into home recording, especially folks that use a lot of MIDI instruments, particularly the Presonus ones, Presonus, and some of the third-party VST instruments, where they'll put like 6 or 10 VST instruments inside of their session, and depending on your computer, the CPU, the amount of cores it has, the amount of memory, and how it's optimized for audio, will depend on when the system starts to crash and break down, meaning that the more of these VSTs that you use, it takes a ton of CPU power, a ton, and you can't just carpet bomb all of your tracks with VSTs because you're going to have all kinds of audio artifacts and all kinds of problems. So one of the things that Presonus did with the version here 4.5 is they're claiming, and I want to make sure I get this right, that they're that using the Studio One virtual instruments, there's about a 70% improvement in efficiency of the way that they're using the CPU and taking advantage of the different cores inside of today's computers, 4 cores, 8 cores, 12 cores, depending on your computer and how big your processor is, and about a 50% improvement in performance with third-party VST instruments. So what does that mean to you? That means that you're going to be able to use more instances of the VSTs inside of your session where it's not going to burden your CPU as heavily, and therefore should resolve some of the audio issues that you might be having with cracks and pops and those kinds of things. And again, those kinds of issues, there's usually 3 or 4 different things that could contribute to having those issues. One of them is because some of these VSTs take an enormous amount of resources. Presonus claims that they've heavily improved that. So if you've had those problems before, version 4.5 might be your solution if you're someone that uses lots of VST instruments, okay? So that's another huge improvement, especially if it's really 70% better efficiency and 50% better efficiency with third-party plugins. That's massive. That's massive. So that's a really great thing. And then the last thing that I want to show you for this video here, something that I've been personally asking for ever since I started using Studio One, and they finally did it. So I want to personally say thank you to all the engineers and Rick Nofke and all the guys over at Presonus. Not that this was my only idea, but I got to tell you, I'm probably one of a handful of people that have been asking for this issue, this thing to be fixed. And a lot of people had said to me in the past, no one ever really complains about that, Dave. You're the only one that complains about this. So maybe I was the sole reason. Who knows? And if I was, kudos to Presonus. Is you can now lock the events on the timeline. Good gracious God, thank you. Okay, so how do you do that? And why would you want to do that? Okay, so let's say I'm highlighting this event here again, this acoustic guitar, right? If I want to move it to the left, oops, I nudged it out of place. Let's do Command Z for that. I don't want that to be nudged. I don't want to accidentally move it. Right click on the events, go down to events. Where is it? I just saw it. It's right up here. Toggle of edit lock, toggle time lock. Okay. I click toggle time lock. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the event, it looks like a little clock. Now watch. Can't move it. Could drag it all over the place. It can never be nudged out of place. However, I can still do my fade ins, my fade outs. I think I can still go in with my blade tool, and I can still chop things up if I wanted to chop things up, right? I could still delete parts of this, but if I want to take this and move it, it doesn't move. If I want to take this and move it, now that I chopped it up, it doesn't move. Thank God. Now, why is this important? Well, let's say you're editing out your tom tracks, your drums, your toms. And a lot of times you'll see that I'll cut out all of the space between the tom hits. And you may, if they're hitting a lot of toms throughout that particular performance, you may have 15 or 20 of these little blocks of audio all over the place. And when you're editing and you're fading in and you're fading out, it's very easily to nudge one out of place. And you may not even realize that you nudge it out of place. You only have to nudge it a sample. If you're working quickly with a mouse or a trackball and you're kind of speedy and you're editing, if you're not careful, you can move it out of place. If you're trying to do lots of fade-ins and fade-outs and you don't grab this thing perfectly, there were times I've nudged things out of place. I had a session for a client once where the vocal was actually in another language. I think it was French. And it wasn't in English, so I couldn't understand the vocals, and there was lots of lead vocal lines, and I nudged a couple of them out of place without even realizing it, and the client had to tell me that it was nudged out of place. So that is a feature where you don't really realize how important it is until you have a couple of times where you nudge things out of place. This is huge. Huge, huge, huge. Now, if you want to, I'll just do Command Z on this. If you want to unlock it, again, you just right click it and you just come down to the event and you just toggle time lock again and it'll come off, and now you can move it to your heart's content, Command Z. You can also lock the entire track. Now this is just the event. If you right click on the track, you can go down to, where is it here? It's here, I know it's here. I think I got to click over here in the actual track area, not so much the event. There is a way to lock the track as well, so it can't be moved. I know, oh, here it is, lock track right here. And you can see the little padlock here, okay? So you can lock the track. Now, does that mean that means you can't edit it, you can't do fade-ins and fade-outs, you can't do cuts. I'm trying to cut and do blade cuts inside of my event. I can't do that. I think you could still rearrange the track. Yes, you can still rearrange the order of the track, but you can't do anything to the track from a editing perspective. This might be good as if you're working through a large session and as you've finished editing certain tracks, you just want to lock them. So again, you just know that they're protected. Again, handy feature. Right click again, you can unlock the track and then you can do whatever you want. I think if you lock the track as well, you can't change the outputs, right? Is that true? Yeah, you can't, can you change the outputs? Oh yes, I guess you can. Okay, that's down here in the mixer view. I was just seeing if you can change that. But in any event, so we can unlock this as well. Love that feature. Thank you so much, Presonus. So those are, let me just check my list one more time. I think that's it. Yeah, input section IO wave. Okay, yeah, that's it. So those are like 11 items. Number one being it's a free update, 10 other items of things that I find very useful in this update. And again, they continue to refine this. And I really think that it's awesome that Presonus does this. Again, my favorite features are the locking the time, locking the events and the tracks, as I just said. The input gain control on the input side of the program is fantastic. Those are really, really cool. The groups, yeah, pretty cool, but I don't use a lot of groups, but I could see where people could find that very, very handy. And the CPU performance is huge, especially because I get that question all the time. That's going to help a lot of you guys. So that is my, from an mixing engineering perspective. Again, if you want to see all 70 features, a lot of it has to do with MIDI and a lot of things for song production, which I don't do a lot of here. My whole gig here is mostly mixing, mastering, education, and some light tracking. So I'm just showing you the features of things that I'm going to be using on a daily basis. And so if you are a version 4 user already, it's a no-brainer. Upgrade to version 4.5. Now, here's one last tip I'll give you. When you go to download that version to version 4.5, it is going to give you one option. Do you want to overwrite version 4, 4.2, whatever the version is before that, 4.3? Or do you want to keep both? I always suggest that you keep both for now. So if you have a problem with version 4.5, I've had no issues with this. I'm running it on Mojave, on an iMac Pro, a brand new iMac Pro. I've had no issues with it at all. It hasn't crashed on me. I haven't used it extensively. It's only been out for a couple of days, but I always keep the old version of the program in case there's a bug or a patch or something that's unique to your system. Because again, a lot of people will always, they'll blame the program because they're having a problem on their computer when 95% of the population doesn't, but they do. They think it's just the program. The problem is everyone's computer is different. Everyone's computer specs are different. Everybody's setup is a little different. And so whenever they do a release, as much as they do tons of beta testing, and I know this because I'm part of the beta testing team, there are always going to be little bugs here and there. And if for something on your system, doesn't behave well with the new version, you can always go back and just open up the old version and your sessions will still run. And another tip, this is not one of those upgrades that when you open up an old session, you have to resave it to the new version. Okay, when we went from version 3 to version 4, you can open up a version 3 session in version 4, but when you save it, it does something under the hood where you can't go back and reopen it in version 3. That is not the case here. At least I have not seen that. So if you open up one of your sessions in version 4.5 and you're having a specific issue and you need to work on your project, you can always open it in the version prior. As long as when you download version 4.5, you don't overwrite, you keep both. And I always do that. Always. The program does not take up that much space on your computer, the application itself. It is always a wise idea to keep both. So if you have a problem while Presonus is, maybe working on a patch or a fix, or you're looking for a specific fix to your specific problem, you always have the way to go back and use your sessions without having any downtime. So that's super important. I don't hear anybody ever talking about that, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, you want to do that. And again, if you are having any problems, one thing I love about the Presonus Studio One family is the community. There is so many now Facebook groups and resources. Yours truly is one of them to help you through your Studio One problems if you're having problems. So if you are having an issue, go to the Facebook groups, search Presonus Studio One. There's a gazillion of them. Hit up, the YouTube channel, search Presonus Studio One. There are a lot of great YouTube channels that are specific to Studio One and the functionality of Studio One. I am one of them, Home Recording Made Easy, but you want guys that are even better than me, go over to Johnny Geib at the Home Studio Trainer. Go over to Johnny Lipsham at johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Just search out Johnny Lipsham on YouTube. You'll find him. You could go to Studio One Expert. You could talk to the people over there. There is a ton of great people that are always willing to help whenever people have issues with Studio One. And you can always contact Presonus themselves. They have a great support team. You can also go out to the Presonus forums and post your question or your problem there. They'll have someone's always there to help. So what I'm trying to convey to you is if you have an issue or if you're new to Studio One, you can always hit me up. But go to those other places that I just mentioned, and I'll leave the links in the description box below. And I guarantee you within 48 hours, somebody will have chimed in trying to help you through your specific issue. So again, great job Presonus on this version 4.5. I think it's really, really great. And I'm looking forward to seeing, is it going to go from 4.5 to version 5? And what's coming up in version 5? There, about every 6 months, we had another massive upgrade with a lot of features that all the user community has been chiming in and wanting, and I'm interested to see what they come up with next. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Again, go get your 30-day free trial at mixingmadeeasy.net. All of the content that I provide is in Studio One, in the latest version of Studio One, but it doesn't matter what DAW you're using. I'm teaching basic mixing and mastering techniques. Again, 30 days, absolutely free, no risk to you. 97.5% of the people that sign up for the free trial stay on their membership because it's the best mixing training you're going to find really at any price, and it's also the most affordable, and you get tons of free stuff. Go to mixingmadeeasy.net and check it out. Go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, download your free courses, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.